gold standards and fantastic unless you really want to get a good night's sleep. We do know, that it just simply lacks ecological validity. Sleeping in the lab is not like sleeping in your own bed. And so I've been very fortunate to work with the Muse, the InteraXon company, to use ambulatory sleep EEG to try and understand multi-night sleep neurophysiology, better understanding the within-person change across short longitudinal periods. So to that end, this sort of exploratory study was really trying to get at these dynamic links in college students, their experiences of stress, as well as their sleep architecture and self-reported mood. Muse is another ambulatory sleep EEG, I think still semi-novel. And so I wanted to just paint a picture of what sort of sleep we were getting. Out of a total of about 1,560 possible observations, just about 1,150, so about 74% of all of the nights we felt were good measures of their sleep, or valid measures. In terms of thinking about sleep, looking at sleep macro sleep architecture, both as a mechanism between evening and morning moods, so that evening negativity sort of impeded REM sleep, so predicting relative decreases in REM sleep, which then again predicting relative decreases in positive mood. We also see that stress, serves as this context under which REM sleep might influence morning mood. So in the context of higher stress, more REM sleep was associated or predicted relative decreases in negative mood. For me as well, just in terms of this work and wanting, in a sense, it's proof of concept, but I think a real strength now is this use of ambulatory EEG, which can highlight the different forms of sleep as both an ecologically valid and very manageable way to assess multiple nights across these students. Today, I really want to talk to you about this dynamic interplay between undergraduate students, their experiences of stress, as well as specifically looking at their mood and the interplay between mood and sleep. And I'm not sure who really to attribute this to. I think it goes back to the ancient Greeks, but college really is a turbulent time. There is a time and a place for everything, probably not sleep though in a college setting. When we look at college students, we know that there are many students suffering from sleep problems, from insufficient sleep. There's also an epidemic of mental health problems going on for college students with anxiety on the rise. We see that many students are compromised, and this interplay between their mental health and sleep is very serious. Digging in a little bit deeper in terms of thinking about their mental health, got me thinking a little bit about sleep staging and specifically REM sleep. And so we know that perceived stress certainly plays a role in sleep architecture, and specifically with REM sleep. We're interested in looking at REM sleep, and that involves this activation of sort of several emotionally related regions, whether it's the amygdala, the hippocampus, the prefrontal cortex. What we see that REM sleep contributes to emotional well-being by decreasing this negative emotional reactivity. And that when individuals are sleep deprived, it can increase emotional reactivity, sort of poor adaptation to stress. We also, there's literature in the world of trauma looking at how REM sleep can aid in the processing of memories for trauma, decoupling memories from their emotional charges. Also know about this long-standing relationship between REM sleep and depression. And so, that'll be something to think a little bit about as I present some of the results. My interest in this work is really, when we talk about PSG as the gold standards and fantastic, unless you really want to get a good night's sleep, we do know, that it just simply lacks ecological validity. Sleeping in the lab is not like sleeping in your own bed. And so I've been very fortunate to work with the Muse, the InteraXon company, to use ambulatory sleep EEG to try and understand multi-night sleep neurophysiology, better understanding the within-person change across short longitudinal periods. So to that end, this sort of exploratory study was really trying to get at these dynamic links in college students, their experiences of stress, as well as their sleep architecture and self-reported mood. So in terms of this study, we were able to recruit 156 college students, primarily female, fairly diverse sample, racially, ethnically, and we brought them into the lab for a comprehensive baseline survey, and then we taught them to use the equipment and sent them off for 10 consecutive nights of ambulatory EEG assessment. Every morning and evening, they also completed a mood and sleep diary. So every morning they were reporting on their previous night's sleep, as well as their current mood upon awakening, and then within an hour of going to bed in the evenings, they also were reporting on their mood. So for this first set, there's sort of two sets of analyses I want to present. And in this first set was looking at specifically the interplay between negative and positive affect. And so in terms of this, originally, and I think 6 months ago when I began to get a handle on this, it's very interesting to look at economic strain, but as you'll see, those results didn't necessarily stay through as we went in and investigated the data further, although the role of stress will come up again and again. So at baseline, we're looking at these between student differences, but interested in both mood as well as just how are they as sleepers. And so we did control for depressive symptoms, PHQ-9, as well as sleep disturbance with the PROMIS measure. The affect, the PANIS, we used to assess mood both in the evenings and in the mornings. And again, over the course of the night, they wore the Muse S device. So this is just to give you a little bit, Muse is another ambulatory sleep EEG, I think still semi-novel. And so I wanted to just paint a picture of what sort of sleep we were getting. Out of a total of about 1,560 possible observations, just about 1,150, so about 74% of all of the nights we felt were good measures of their sleep or valid measures. There are different measures of recording in terms of validity, and we specifically selected what we felt were the most valid recordings. Again, this was provided through at least having connection to one of the electrodes or receiving a strong positive signal. You can see that as college students, they were sleeping like college students, quite variable, not getting enough. But we do see in terms of the sort of macro staging, that on the whole, I think they follow what we would expect over the course of a night in terms of their percentage breakdowns in terms of sleep. So in terms of looking at this interplay, for me to start, looking at the day-to-day fluctuations and connections between mood and sleep. First model is looking at mediation. So to what extent does REM sleep act as a mechanism between evening and morning mood? So I call this the dueling octopi model. And in terms of this model, it's important to a couple of different characteristics of it. First, it's really, so dynamic structural equation modeling is really a dynamic cross-lagged panel model. So it's controlling for an autoregressive path across the course of the 10 days that we measured sleep. So in this, we're really looking at residual changes. And a natural lag in terms of their being assessed, they're reporting their mood in the evening, within an hour of going to sleep, and then they sleep for the night. So there's a natural sort of lags built in, and then upon waking, within an hour of waking up, they are again reporting mood. And so the nice part about this dynamic modeling is that it does allow us to look at the unique contributions of the between and within person variation. It allows us to parse that out so as not to conflate the results with that. So in terms of looking at this first model specifically of REM sleep as a mediator of evening to morning mood, we do see that relative increases in negative evening mood are associated with fewer REM minutes, and that fewer REM minutes resulted in or predicted relatively or residual decreases in morning positive mood. In terms of controlling for our baseline, it's, in some ways I think of this as just a sort of like credibility to the model that we are seeing that students, who are reporting higher levels of depression, they're also going to be reporting higher levels of evening mood, a negative mood, but then also that sleep disturbance ultimately is more sleep disturbance was resulting in fewer REM minutes. And that, these between subject to within subject, also these blue and yellow paths also serve as significant mediation pathways, so that depressive symptoms were predicting ultimately morning mood through evening mood, but then also sleep disturbance as a result of predicting fewer REM minutes, and then again fewer REM minutes predicting relative decrease. Fewer REM minutes predicting relative decreases in morning positive mood. Switching gears a little bit, we then said, okay, so we can see that sleep architecture, or specifically REM sleep, might act as a mechanism, but under what context, and in what ways might this occur? And so this next set of analyses are of exploratory nature, looking at, in this case, under what context? Well, under the context of when students are more stressed out, when they're perceiving more stress in their lives. Also, wanting to think a little bit more about REM sleep and its connections to depression, but specifically to SSRI use. We further sort of enhanced this model in controlling for SSRI usage. In this analysis, now we're looking just specifically at negative affect, so evening negative affect, predicting ultimately morning negative affect, and as well, I think in terms of this analysis, we have a little bit more power, or just simply the model can handle more controls, and so we included more aspects of night-to-night sleep, as well as sleep efficiency and sleep quality, so the reports of sleep quality in the morning. Again, the ambulatory sleep EEG was measured with the Muse S. So a little different family of the dueling octopi model, but here looking at specifically moderation. So under what context do these relationships present? And in terms of our model, we're specifically focused on stress, and that did maintain in terms of moderation. The baseline controls did not significantly predict, but we do see that in terms of this relationship, specifically, we see that participants that were reporting higher levels of stress, that this is related to a stronger negative slope between REM minutes and morning negative mood. So specifically, in the context of higher stress, there's a stronger relationship between REM sleep and morning negative mood. So the more REM minutes, the less negative mood. So in terms of the context of stress, what I think is interesting is how REM sleep is, in a sense, potentially, in the sense of stress, we see that this, in a sense, a protective model where REM sleep is actually the context of stress, that the more REM sleep that the students are engaging in, resulting in less negative mood, so maybe fulfilling its role in terms of emotional regulation. So in summary, we're looking in terms of thinking about sleep, looking at sleep macro sleep architecture, both as a mechanism between evening and morning moods, so that evening negativity sort of impeded REM sleep, so predicting relative decreases in REM sleep, which then again predicting relative decreases in positive mood. We also see that stress, serves as this context under which REM sleep might influence morning mood. So in the context of higher stress, more REM sleep was associated or predicted relative decreases in negative mood. For me as well, just in terms of this work and wanting, in a sense, it's proof of concept, but I think a real strength now is this use of ambulatory EEG, which can highlight the different forms forms of sleep as both an ecologically valid and very manageable way to assess multiple nights across these students. No studies without limitations, and we certainly have a few, but in terms of response bias, and we are limited to self-report, obviously mood. One of the things that we've actually going to improve on, and hopefully I'll be presenting to you next year, we'll be looking at some of the objective stress measures. So Labfront and Garmin have supplied us with HRV-based watches, and so we'll be looking at heart rate variability and more objective measures of stress. Ambulatory EEG is not PSG, so perhaps there is a less precise measurement, but I think in terms of the flexibility and the ability to follow students over the course of multiple nights, it's certainly worth that. And then also, although college students are not the best sleepers, they generally are very healthy young adult sleepers, and so this model generalizes to that population perhaps, but there are certainly applications in thinking more about generalizing to more diverse populations would be really important. So again, I really want to thank the ASM Foundation for supporting this work. Also my mentor, Dr. Jamie Zeitzer, who's been fantastic in terms of shepherding me along this pathway. The participants have been fantastic for this study, and then I wouldn't have been able to do this without my research assistants. So thank you very much.
Thank you for this great talk. A lot of data. We have time for 2 questions.
And I will be presenting a poster at 11, so if the cat's got your tongue and you'd like to speak to me individually, at 11 I'll be at poster number 290. Look forward to speaking with you there.
How would you reconcile your results with the fact that most antidepressants tend to inhibit REM sleep?
So we had we had a fairly small population wearing or using SSRIs, and so they can play a role in terms of our analyses, and we did control for them. So the findings around decreasing REM sleep, temporarily decreasing depressive symptoms, depression. Of course, that springs right back up as soon as they begin to get more sleep. So in terms of this, I think I go back to sort of the basic nature. We're really trying to understand REM sleep in terms of its relationship to mood. The studies that have been looking at this in particular have been focused on one night, typically, in a sleep lab. So that have this more ecologically valid or just real instance, I think, of where we're seeing this interplay, I think lends a little bit more credence in terms of the role of REM sleep. I would love to do a little bit more sensitivity analyses that actually specifically look at what other role might the SSRI users play for that we have in our study. We also have measures of melatonin usage and cannabis usage, and so again, trying to understand a little bit more about where those are playing in the system, I think will be interesting moving forward. Thank you for the question. Thank you.